This is Brother Medina for Tuesday, Seventh-day Adventist, and please let us start with a word of prayer. Loving Father, please be with us as we enter into this presentation. Bless all listeners and help them to see the lateness of time and prepare for your second coming by conversion through your Holy Spirit. These mercies we ask of you through Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen. Well, we are continuing our personal talk, and in our personal talk, we are discussing strange things that are going on around the world as Christianity prepares for a terrible assault. Yes, my dear people. In this personal talk number 9, we want to show you that the U.S. military has identified evangelical Christians as the number one threat and as the number one problem in the world and in the United States. Yes, my dear people. So put it this way. Instead of the U.S. military dealing with fighting wars, etc., they are now targeting Christians. And this is clearly showing you changes are taking place in the world. We have heard that the end shall come soon. We have heard that great Christian persecution will return to the earth. Persecution has been going on upon Christians in Muslim lands and other places of the earth, and in subtle ways. But now we have an even bigger threat, where evangelical Christianity is being identified as the number one threat. This means that laws are coming to deal with Christianity. Yes, my dear people. When we see those foreshadows of coming events, we are warned that we need to prepare, and we need to recognize that Christ has given us those signs before, that we would see how late time is, that we would prepare ourselves for the end which is swiftly coming. Yes, my dear people. So we have told you these things so far to let you know the lateness of time. No ill intent is meant to anyone. However, speaking the plain truth and nothing but the truth is always the best option when it comes to helping people. And there are many people that can't take the pure, unvarnished truth. You see, sometimes people get unsettled. They get conviction, and the conviction makes them, tells them that they have to change certain ways that they are living, and they're not willing to change. As a result of that, they find some excuse to reject what is being said to justify themselves in the ways in which they're living. And this has happened many times in the past, even in people dealing with the very convicting words of Christ. And this is no difference now. There is no difference now. This same thing is happening, and this is the reason why you've got to recognize that you need to be honest, you need to be sincere. When you see trouble coming, recognize your way of life is not right, and you need to change, and you need to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is not a bad thing you're being called upon to do. Rather, it's a good thing. Now, I have in my hand here certain documents. Let me read for you the name or the title of the first document. I quote, "Military warned Evangelicals number one threat. Christians targeted ahead of Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, KKK." Did you see that? That's the headline of this document. But let me read for you some of the shocking contents of this document to help reinforce in your mind how late time is and that big changes are coming. The world that you know to have a certain measure of peace, even though we don't call this peace, the little that we have is going to go rapidly, and there are going to be deaths, destruction, attacks on every side. Christians are going to be persecuted worldwide, and there are going to be a lot of deaths as religious laws are enforced to force people to follow God in certain ways. Yes, my dear people. Let me quote for you this document. I quote, "Soldiers in the U.S. military have been told in a training briefing that evangelical Christians are the number one extremist threat to America." Notice what they say, the number one extremist threat to America, ahead of groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, the KKK, the Nation of Islam, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and others. Yes, my dear people, did you hear that? This is what we are now being told, and this is what the military was actually told. I continue. Retired Colonel Ron Cruz, Executive Director of the Chaplain Alliance for Religious Liberty, said, "It is dishonorable for any U.S. military entity to allow this type of wrong-headed characterization. It also appears that some military entities are using definitions of hate and extreme from the lists of anti-Christian political organizations. That violates the apolitical stance appropriate for the military." End of quote. Did you see that? So the military is supposed to have a non-political stance, but there are certain anti-Christian political organizations in the United States that use the terms hate and extreme to identify evangelical Christianity. The Southern Poverty Law Center is one of them. Again, the ACLU is one of them. But apparently the military is using hate and extreme terms from lists from these anti-Christian organizations to characterize Christians. Yes, my dear people. And this is the reason why you have such a term being used against Christians by the U.S. military. I continue. The briefing, which was given to an Army Reserve unit in Pennsylvania, came from the U.S. Army Reserve Equal Opportunity Training Brief titled Extremism and Extreme Organizations. Did you see that? Now, a lot of wrong things have been done in the name of equal opportunity. But whenever they say equal opportunity, it is never equal opportunity for the majority or never equal opportunity for Christians. It is always equal opportunity for others, but never the majority and never Christians. So put it this way, some are being denied the benefits or the provinities that are given to some. So under this guise of equal opportunity, this training brief came to the U.S. military. Let me read a little more what it says about this. I continue. The material mentions neo-Nazis, the Ku Klux Klan, and other white supremacist organizations. Pictures are shown on various slides of people in Klan attire and Nazi flags. The significance of gang tattoos and racist acronyms and the significance of numbers are also discussed. Now, could you imagine this is what the military is talking about? So far from what they're supposed to be doing. But here we are being told they take people and they put the Ku Klux Klan and they put Nazi flags on them and use those images to tell the military such people are the #1 threat. Did you see that kind of horrible propaganda? But yet this is what they have been doing. I continue. A slide titled Religious Extremism lists multiple organizations such as the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, the Nation of Islam, the Ku Klux Klan, and the Christian Identity Movement as examples of extremist groups. However, the first group on the list is Evangelical Christianity. Catholicism and ultra-Orthodox Judaism are also on the list of religious extremist organizations. End of quote. Did you just hear what we're talking about here? On this list, the religions that are #1 threat to the United States are Evangelical Christianities. Catholicism is second on the list, and ultra-Orthodox Judaism is third on the list. Then come the others that are usually considered as terrorist organizations. Did you see that? So the military is now being trained that Christians are terrorists and that Christians are the #1 threat for the United States. And when they say evangelical Christians, this takes in Seventh-day Adventism and the whole host of Sunday-keeping evangelical churches. Yes, my dear people. And it also takes in Catholicism. That's what it does in this document here. I continue. Following the briefing, one of the soldiers who attended the presentation and describes himself as an evangelical told the trainer he was offended at the material and asked for a copy of the briefing. After receiving a copy, he forwarded the material to Mr. Cruz. I continue. The material describes religious extremism as those having beliefs, attitudes, feelings, or actions that are far removed from the ordinary. Did you just hear what I read? Let me read it for you again, and pay attention. The material describes religious extremism as those having beliefs, attitudes, feelings, or actions that are far removed from the ordinary. Did you see that? The question is, who determines what is the ordinary? The military? The Southern Poverty Law Center? The ACLU? An executive order written by President Obama? Who determines what is the ordinary? But not just only that, they are now judging your beliefs, so there's no freedom of belief. They are now judging your very attitudes. Could you imagine a man can get into trouble because of his attitude? They're also judging your feelings. Good Lord, how do they know what you are feeling? They might look at the contortions of your face, or they might take your expressions and say, that means you are feeling such and such. And then they are going to judge you as an extremist. Did you see how low and how far these people have fallen? These are the dangers that we are facing, but many people say, well, it will never happen here in Trinidad and Tobago. But we pointed you to certain scriptures in our previous programs, showing you in Revelation chapter 13, verse 12, that he, America, caused the earth and all that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So here America will cause the earth and all that dwell therein. But for America to cause the earth and all that dwell therein, America must first change. And it is changing at a rapid pace from being the voice of a lamb to the voice of the dragon, as we showed you before. This is the reason why they are now looking to judge people's beliefs and attitudes. If it is not ordinary, if it is far removed from the ordinary, who tells them what is the ordinary? Who is to determine that? Why are they looking to judge people's beliefs' contents? People may have a discussion in beliefs, and one may be right, one may be wrong, or two may be wrong, or two may be right. And in this discussion, it is an effort for one person to give up his teachings and accept another teachings, etc. Well, okay, that has happened from time immemorial. Abel tried to change Cain's way of thinking, and Cain tried to change Abel's way of thinking. And because Abel refused to change and still insists that Cain should change, Cain slew Abel. So from the very beginning, this thing has been happening. But now the military want to play Cain. That's right. They want to become Cain in their behavior. Let me continue to read this clause for you. It says this. The material describes religious extremism as those having beliefs, attitudes, feelings, or actions that are far removed from the ordinary. It then elaborates by saying that every religion has some followers that believe that their beliefs, customs, and traditions are the only right way, and that all others practicing their faith the wrong way. End of quote. Did you see that? So now the military is going to judge you for claiming that your faith is the only right way and all the others are wrong. Could you imagine this? Who has given them this work? And if this is the kind of training the military is facing now, they are preparing to persecute Christians who stands up against the beast and his image and claims that their way is the only right way and a person has to follow it to be saved. Did you see that? So here, again, changes are coming, and we are giving you signs of those coming events. You're seeing foreshadows of those coming events. God has had us be like watchmen on the walls of Zion, and as we see the danger coming, we are blowing our trumpet. But who is listening? We continue. Cruz said, it is astounding that soldiers were taught that a key foundation of the Christian faith is now considered extreme and compared to those who want to implement Sharia law. Did you see that? Did you see that? So they're saying those who want to establish Sharia law, that is Muslims, that we are being told that the Christian faith, considering themselves right alone, is extreme as those who want to establish Sharia law. This is what we are being told. I continue. The idea of salvation being exclusively through Christ is a key doctrine of the Christian faith, Crew says. It is amazing that the trainer felt they had the authority and right to list evangelical Christians, Catholics, and Orthodox Jews alongside groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. When pressed as to how evangelical Christians and Catholics are a danger to those serving in the military, the brief does not provide any examples. However, it does provide several examples of Muslim extremists in the military. Yes, my dear people. But yet you provide that about Muslim extremists in the military, but you do not give any evidence of how Christians are the number one threat. I continue. Passage of this legislation could directly and indirectly influence potential court-martial panel members, witnesses, or the chain of command, all of whom exercise a critical role under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The Army said, Defense Counsel will argue, and such and such and such. Did you see that, my dear people? So the point again, let me continue. I continue. Cruz said the major problem with the training brief is that it relies heavily on material provided by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has claimed that groups such as WND, the Family Research Council, and other pro-family groups are hate groups and extremists. So this is what the Southern Poverty Law Center has said, and this is an anti-Christian group, something like the ACLU. We continue. We are concerned the use of the SPLC list, the Southern Poverty Law Center list, is not isolated, Cruz said. The Army should make sure its equal opportunity officers across the military do not fall prey and use this Southern Poverty Law Center list that identifies Christians and conservative organizations as hate groups as the basis for their briefing. Yes, my dear people. He went on to say that placing evangelical Christians first on the list of religious extremists speaks volumes about how the Southern Poverty Law Center views Christianity compared to other religious groups. This is absolutely abhorrent to all those who identify themselves as evangelical Christians in this country, Cruz said. We know other commands have used the SPLC list in briefing soldiers about hate crimes and hate groups. But this particular briefing is the most egregious in terms of blatantly identifying evangelical Christianity as the number one extremist group in the United States. The material claims the number of hate groups, extremists, and anti-government organizations has increased. Yes, my dear people. So, put it this way, as far as they are claiming evangelical Christianity is the number one hate group and the number one threat to the United States of America. This is just one of the threats one of the attempts to bring Christians under persecution being used by the U.S. military. There are others also. Take, for instance, I have in my hand here a document by the name of Pentagon. Christians may face imprisonment for sharing faith. Did you hear that? The Pentagon, the organization, the U.S. government organization that controls the military, tells us this. I quote, Christians may face imprisonment for sharing faith. Do you see what's going on here? First, Christians is the number one threat to America, the number one extremist group, the number one terrorist group. Now, Christians may face imprisonment for sharing faith. Do you see this thing? We on Power 102 here, Tuesday Seventh-day Adventists, that preaches escape for thy life, are warning you and showing you what is coming, because we are looking at these things through the eyes of faith. So we are showing you what is coming, and you're being called upon to get yourself prepared, brace for it. Not only do we have problems in the natural world, we also have problems taking place in the political world, and there are dangers and perplexity on all sides. Let me read this document for you. I quote, "Freedom of religion for soldiers. A new Pentagon statement says U.S. soldiers can be sentenced to imprisonment under federal military law for sharing their faith." Did you see that? A Pentagon statement says you can be imprisoned under military law for sharing your faith. Do you see what's coming? Are you taking these things light? Do you see how grievous such things are? Let me continue. A major slap in the face of the United States military forces, who are being stripped of the very rights they are supposed to be fighting to protect overseas. The Pentagon met with well-known anti-Christian militant Mickey Weinstein, he's a Jew, and the laughable Military Religious Freedom Foundation. This is a foundation for the military, in order to set new rules that punish Christians with imprisonment and dishonorable discharge for daring to share the gospel in any capacity. End of quote. Did you see that? Did you see that? According to the new statement by the Pentagon, as reported on by Breitbart, in a piece that has now close to 1 million Facebook shares alone, Christians who dare to share the Bible or the teachings of Jesus may face court-martial. As released early this morning, the Pentagon stated, quote, "Religious proselytization is not permitted within the Department of Defense. Court-martials and non-judicial punishments are decided on a case-by-case basis." Did you see that? So if you are teaching and training a person, no, your belief is wrong. This is the truth. This is what Jesus said. You can be prosecuted by the U.S. military. This is the new policy. They are now saying Christians mustn't share their faith in any capacity. And that if you seek to change a person from his religion to your religion, you're going to be judged on a case-by-case basis and how they will punish you.
An investigation done by Fox News Channel's own Todd Starnes. Now, he says there is a war on religious liberty within the military and that the Christianity of service members is now coming under attack by the Obama administration. Now, the Pentagon has now gone on record explaining what will happen to any service member who is caught spreading his or her own faith. And the statement reads in part, "Religious proselytizing is not permitted within the Department of Defense. Court-martials and non-judicial punishments are decided on a case-by-case basis." Here to explain the situation from Fox News Radio, Todd Starnes, Fox News contributor, Democratic strategist, Jacques DeGraff. He didn't wear his minister's suit, which is totally unfair. It's an unfair advantage. It makes me look like I'm arguing with a man of the cloth.
I'll leave God to settle that one.
All right. This is a serious issue. You did an investigation. You've been able to confirm it. Tell everybody the story.
That's right, Sean. And in a nutshell, the Obama administration, under the Obama administration, we have seen a Christian cleansing of the United States military. Dozens and dozens of instances of Christianity under attack. And this most recent incident occurred a few days ago when Mikey Weinstein, who is the head of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, had a meeting at the Pentagon where he was urging them, the military, to enforce regulations that he believes would result in the court-martial of anyone proselytizing, sharing their faith. The military, the Pentagon, issued a statement to me on Monday. They said that proselytizing was against the Department of Defense regulations. After our story came out earlier today, they walked back that statement and they said that they do believe in sharing your faith, that soldiers are allowed to do that. But, Sean, we're getting new information from the Air Force. The Air Force today issued a statement to me, and I want to read this. They say that proselytizing, inducing someone to convert to one's faith, goes over the line. It is not allowed. So basically, we're getting conflicting information now from the military. But one thing is very clear, that under this administration, we have seen the Christian faith come under a significant attack.
All right. Now, Weinstein is a controversial figure in and of himself. You know, he went, give us some of the reasons. He said that, for example, that it's sedition and treason.
That's right.
And what other controversial things has he said?
Sean, Mr. Weinstein said that the act of sharing one's faith, this proselytizing, is akin to spiritual rape. This is the wording he used at the Pentagon. Now, here's the question.
He used it while selling this stupidity.
Spiritual rape. Now, here's the question. This is the same Pentagon that invites Mr. Weinstein to come in and to give his view of things, but at the same time, they're banning people like Franklin Graham from the Pentagon's National Day of Prayer. They're banning people like Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council. What they're telling us is one thing, but what's happening in reality is very different. Last year, an Air Force officer had a Bible on his desk. He was told to remove that Bible because it might give the appearance that he was endorsing a specific faith. And earlier today at the National Day of Prayer event, Rear Admiral William Lee scrubbed his prepared remarks, and he told people there is a storm coming. He said that there are instances that faith is in fact under attack in the military, and he asked people to pray for the soldiers because of what they're having to deal with in the military.
This is a little scary. You got to admit, if you can't speak freely, I mean,
that's right.
Somebody doesn't want to hear it, just say, I don't want to hear it.
You know, the issue of a Bible on a desk by a military officer, to me, crosses the line. He's allowed
a Bible
on his desk. Says to anyone coming in who is not a Christian that this officer endorses this religion.
So what?
That's not that's not separation of church and state.
Well,
if he wants it on his desk, if he wants to keep it in his desk, if he wants it on his nightstand, but I think it crosses the line.
He's on a battlefield and they're in a break.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
It does the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
Oh,
but at any rate,
we got to go quick.
Sean, real quick, this admiral said he wanted to send a Bible to a soldier who had attempted suicide, and he went ahead and sent it anyway, even though he knew that he was going to get a letter from the lawyer saying, hey, you crossed the line.
I hope somebody takes this to court.
Meantime, there is growing outrage today over a Pentagon decision that could possibly lead to court-martials of soldiers and even military chaplains for sharing their faith. The ban on proselytizing comes after an atheist organization met with Air Force officials demanding that soldiers who spend too much time talking about Jesus be booted from the military. Pete Hegseth is CEO of Concerned Veterans for America, and the group that pushed for this is called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, that said U.S. troops who proselytize, basically preach and try to spread the faith, are guilty of sedition and treason, and we have to stop this, quote, horrible, horrendous, dehumanizing behavior. The Air Force didn't say, get out. They said, you may have a point. Tell us.
Well, I don't want to give any credit to this group bringing the charge. He also equated sharing your faith with sexual assault and rape, calling it spiritual rape. Who's the person bringing this case? Pentagon never should have allowed them in the Pentagon to talk about it. They're anti-Christian zealots, end of story. But however, the story that has come out of that meeting is that the DOD has changed its policy completely. And I think it's a little early, and there's a lot of speculation at this point about whether there is a change at all. I've got two statements from the DOD here that I've read thoroughly, and they're defending that their policy has not changed yet. It is you are free to share your faith, free to talk with others. You obviously can't and never have been able to use your position to coerce, to force conversions, to put undue influence on subordinates. You've never been able to do that. But nothing within the DOD regulations today restrict your ability to share your faith. Chaplains, a lot of my commanders have been very religious. It's something that's infused in the bond of a unit oftentimes, but they've never forced it down anyone's throat. The worry here would be, is this a trial balloon for more restrictions? I hope that's not the case.
The regulation seems to be, and by the way, this group is very controversial, as you point out. Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, who advocates on behalf of, Christian values, that kind of thing, more conservative Christian values, calls this one of the most rabid atheist groups in America. He said it's like consulting with China on how to improve human rights, to be talking to them about religious freedom in the military. The military, their regulation, as far as I can see, Pete, comes out, it says you have to have government neutrality regarding religion, and they're supposed to balance constitutional protections for free exercise of religion and the prohibition against too much government interference. So it's not like you're supposed to say, no religion, period. We don't want to hear about religion. Don't speak about religion. Don't tell us if you're religious. You just can't really preach it and try to force it on others the way I read it.
Well, the statement even says you can evangelize. So if you want to evangelize and talk with fellow soldiers and share your faith and why it's important to you in the context of why you wear the uniform or just as a person, you can do that. It's just going that next level of using your position to coerce subordinates or to force conversions or say the only faith we recognize here is a Christian faith.
Is that happening?
I serve with Christians. No, I mean, not very often. I mean, sure, you'll have a one-off here of a commander here or there that's a little too forceful, but usually that's just somebody being stupid. At the end of the day, you've got Christians and Muslims and Jews. And it's a very diverse environment that are standing alongside each other of different faiths oftentimes, but the majority, obviously, at this point in the military are Christians, so there are more Protestant and Catholic chaplains than there are of other faiths, but those chaplains, even them, aren't pressing or pushing those of other faiths to convert. That's just not something that's happening across the board.
The Pentagon apparently met with this group, and it's the person who speaks for them, Weinstein, in connection with other people too. It wasn't just Mickey Weinstein. It was some other, or Mikey, whatever you pronounce his name, Weinstein. They met with a bunch of groups, and he was one of them. But this guy's message is, to allow folks to proselytize, they're creating tyranny, oppression, degradation, humiliation, and horrible, horrible pain among members of the military. He calls it a national security threat. Why are we meeting with such a... I mean, like, there are atheists who make their point rationally and in a way that's persuasive and we can all understand. What do you make of it?
Well, I don't know. The door has been opened to some strange folks under this administration that have been given access at times that I don't think would have been given access by other administrations. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Weinstein requested this meeting, not the other way around, but they probably shouldn't. There's no reason they should have done it, and I hope the military pushes back forcefully and recognizes how important faith is, but we're not imposing it on anybody.
Pete, thank you.
I continue. What's even more concerning, however, is what the individual who worked with the Pentagon has to say about Christians who share their faith and what should happen to them. Mickey Weinstein actually has said that those who share their faith, such as even a Bible verse or anything, are guilty of downright treason. In fact, Weinstein says that sharing your faith amounts to spiritual rape, which he says is the same thing as sexual assault. So, not only are you a traitor accused of treason for sharing the gospel in any capacity, but you're also committing a form of sexual assault. Did you see that? Weinstein, who worked closely with the Obama administration Pentagon heads of draft procedures outlined in the Pentagon statement, he even calls Christians bloody monsters who are raping and terrorizing the people. Did you see that? Did you see that? The report echoes prior warnings from law enforcement around the nation who have been warning that Christians are increasingly being classified by the Department of Homeland Security as domestic terrorists. Did you see that? The Department of Homeland Security in America is now characterizing Christians as domestic terrorists. Did you see that? Now we're going to have to talk more about this in our next program, but we want you to see how late time is. We want you to see what is going on. We want you to be aware of how far time has reached, that you may know that the end is near, even at the doors. We want you to know these things, that you may be aware that great destruction is coming, and you need to prepare for the end. Look, we have read these things for you. Look, we have given you documentary proof. In Tuesday, we don't make joke with that. We make sure we get evidence to make sure we believe the truth. And this is what we have been warning you of, and we have shown you these things. We have shown you these things because we want you to be aware of the lateness of time. No ill was meant to anyone. However, we are speaking the plain truth just as it is, unvarnished, not soft-footing it, but giving it to you as it is, that you would know how late time is and prepare for the second coming of Jesus. You cannot change yourself. Christ could change you, and he wants you to give yourself to him that he may change you and prepare you for the end, that you would live forever in a new body, happy and holy and glorifying God. Yes, my dear people, if you find your whole attitude and your whole spirit and experience doesn't like Christian values, God is supposed to change that for you. If you give him a chance, he can change that for you. Let him do it. Now, we have now started a new television program on CNN TV 6, and it will be every second Sunday and every fourth Sunday of the month at 10 a.m. on TV 6. So you will hear us on TV 6 at 10 a.m. where we can present you video footage of the things we are seeing. So if you want this information, if you want this whole program and others before it, call us at 625-0446, 625-0446, and we would send this for you. And may God bless you and prepare you to face the end until we meet again. In Jesus' holy name, amen.